Call on members. Order of the day number 5.
Charter Schools Application of Official Information and Ombudsman Acts Bill, first reading.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Charter Schools Application of Official Information and Ombudsman Acts Bill be now read a first time, and should it be successful, I nominate the Education and Science Committee to consider the bill. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased that my private member's bill has been drawn from the ballot to highlight the double standard the government is creating in the education system between charter schools and public schools. A classic divide is now emerging in our education system, which is based on ideology, in fact, over a cup of tea that occurred between ACT and National. And it's based on failed charter school models from other countries like the USA and the UK, which evidence in itself shows did not work, is not working, and why are we following blindly down this track? Mr Speaker, blind ideology is not the foundation of a good quality public education system. The bill proposes to shift away from offering charter schools special treatment and bring them into line with other schools in our public education system. So what's the special treatment I'm referring to? It's not having the fact that charter schools are funded at a different rate to public schools is a shame. The fact that charter schools get bonus payments, even though the terms of their contracts are not publicly visible, and neither is their educational performance comparable to the expectations of our public schools, and that's also a shame. Charter schools are able to make a profit. The terms of the agreements of charter schools are not publicly transparent. So my bill will enhance public confidence. My bill will ensure that charter schools are subject to the Official Information and Ombudsman's Act, which they're currently exempt from. The bill will impose greater accountability for the use of taxpayers' money, and that these schools face the same level of scrutiny as any other school in our public education system, and that is as it should be. The Ombudsman has called the current exemption situation unconstitutional, which calls into question how the government has allowed publicly funded charter schools to be exempt from public accountability. It's not just about transparency of funding, it's also about transparency of school policies and decisions that impact on our child's learning environment. But let's pause for a moment and think about that learning environment and some of the shocking situations which required the Ombudsman to step in. In 2011, when serious bullying accusations were being made in a school in Wellington, an investigation took place. Were it not for the ability of the Ombudsman to gather information that was not readily available from ERO or the Ministry of Education, some of the improvements and recommendations that we now have within the education system would not have been made. It's really important to ensure that the Ombudsman Act and the Official Information Act exist. These are the pillars of accountability in our public system, and they should apply equally to charter schools. Let's also pause and have a look at the issue of suspensions, stand-downs and exclusions. The Ombudsman himself said that by not enabling a complaint to the Ombudsman, the absence of this independent oversight in partnership schools could potentially employ expulsion or exclusion procedures as a means of indirectly circumventing the requirement to accept all students, irrespective of background or ability, who apply for entry at a charter school, ostensibly a backdoor method of choosing winners. These are really important comments when we think about the practical applications of what this bill is trying to achieve. Unfortunately, there's already been too many issues with charter schools, which just goes to show how important greater transparency is within the charter school system. Whangaruru School in Northland was closed by the Ministry after just 2 years of operating. They spent a whole heap of money on buying land, a farm. There were already problems recognised in that school before approval, charter school approval was given, and yet the Ministry and the Minister and the Government continue to pursue establishing this charter school. Bullying, drug use claims, issues around teaching capacity were things that emerged. And this is the very reason why we would want to see the pragmatic approach in my bill being implemented. An Auckland charter school has had complaints made against it by parents and a teacher about behaviour policies, bullying and a lack of cultural awareness. Like the example that I raised in 2011, this would be the exact reason why you would want to have the Ombudsman and its independent oversight being able to investigate such claims to assure parents and students that the policies and processes being implemented at a charter school are sound and are fair. There's also a document that's just been released to show that charter schools' NCEA results have been massively overinflated, raising concerns on a case-by-case basis about the robust nature of the statistics and outcomes being reported through these charter schools. I see the member for ACT guffawing over there, but he knows, as many members on the Education and Science Select Committee know, that this is a tragedy, it shouldn't happen, and it's not the way in which we believe a good education system is founded. All of these examples demonstrate that we need greater accountability, not just for the taxpayer, but to the parents and to the students who attend these schools. It's so important. Millions of dollars are going to charter schools, over 4 times the rate of state schools, yet there is very little accountability for that money. Labor believes that every dollar invested in education should go to supporting the learning outcomes of our children, but sadly this is unclear whether it's happening or not, and in fact many charter schools can derive a profit from their operation. Oh, the minister says, oh no, so he accepts that a profit is being made by charter schools, yet our public schools still continue to struggle. And they're not being funded what they should be funded. And a student going to a charter school is paid more than a student going to a public school. How is that right? How is that right? It's not right. Funding for our state schools have been frozen. Parents are being asked to contribute more towards their children's education through voluntary donations. Mr. Speaker, and coming back to the bill, under Labor, a 2-tiered education system creating winners and losers, haves and have-nots, via charter schools will not be supported. But let's get back to the point. Greater transparency and accountability in our current education system is absolutely necessary. In fact, reporting on a level playing field would be fantastic, and to ensure that we could compare apples with apples, this bill will go a long way towards ensuring that that happens. You cannot have a system, Mr. Speaker, where boards can hide their operations, their policies and processes when public schools are expected to be accountable to their parent community and to the Education Act for what they do. Mr. Speaker, the bill proposes to level the education landscape so that transparency and accountability of charter schools are the same as any other school in our state sector. It is a simple amendment that I'm proposing. It's to ensure that the Ombudsman Act and the Official Information Act apply equally. It does fill a gap that currently exists that is not covered by ERO and the Ministry of Education. The Ombudsman, when the charter schools were being established, commented on this. He made a number of fine points in his submission to ensure that the Select Committee and the Government would give greater consideration to the proposal which I am now putting before the House. We have now had the benefit of hindsight. There are local examples which members in this House can point to justify why this bill would be a sensible and pragmatic approach to levelling the education landscape and ensuring greater transparency and accountability in reporting. To give parents the assurance that if they had a concern, that those concerns would be heard fairly, with the oversight of an independent body and not under the shroud of a school board that is not as accountable. So, Mr. Speaker, I implore the House to consider the pragmatic approach that I'm offering in the bill. It is one that is supported by previous representations of the Ombudsman, and it is one that will ensure, again, greater transparency in the current education offerings that we have between charter schools and public schools. Kia ora.
The question is, at the moment,